one of the things that maybe we'll get into this in a little bit. One of the things I think we touched on a little bit in the last time round was, you know, this conversation where I've seen over the last few years, as the conversation around servitization has become more mainstream, shall we say, I've seen the terms servitization and outcome-based services being used synonymously. And I think one of the things that the pandemic has perhaps shone a spotlight on is those companies that went fully towards outcome-based services, as you're kind of alluding to there, when an industry switched off, aviation being a completely perfect example, the print copy market, anyone that's providing on-demand services within an office environment as well, suddenly revenue gets switched off and they've got those fixed line costs. And so I think perhaps one of the things that we need to do in the kind of, as we kind of start picking back up through the rubble of 2020 and building whatever comes in 2022, because I think this year is going to be a lot of rebuilding for most companies, to be honest. I think one of the things we need to really start to do is really unpick what this broad term of servitization means, and understand that there are subsets, and it's not just one way of approaching it. It doesn't have to be outcome-based services. Servitization could go. We've got the advanced approach to servitization, the advanced services approach, and there are many layers. I think one of the things I've been thinking about, Christian, I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is perhaps the way that we've all talked about servitization almost as it's like a pyramid or a series of steps from transactional service here to outcome here, and it's kind of, it's seen as there's a linear, almost a linear progression, and that progression, every step we go on that progressive staircase is an improvement. And I think perhaps that's not necessarily the case. I think perhaps we maybe want to look at it as a spectrum, or even there are tiers. So we want, maybe some clients want that outcome based, and there's obviously great arguments for that in normal times, but perhaps there's some more middle line areas that are I suppose it's having a diversified service portfolio as well.
It certainly does.
Is that making any sense to you?
Does that resonate? Can mean so many different things. To me, it's essentially a change process. As companies become more service orientated, one way or the other, it could be focusing solely on outcome based contracting, although that's quite unusual. It's common in some industries, but in others, well, you certainly have certain outcome-based contracts, oftentimes driven by particular customers wanting to have those contracts, whereas in other cases, well, it's still very traditional, still rather product-centric. You sell the products, and then on top of that, some additional services. Maybe still you give away a lot of service for free, which is what I, in the book, the Service Strategy in Action, call one of the 7 deadly sins of service myopic firms. But nonetheless, that's a common practice still even today. But many of the most profitable ones are basic after-sales services. Of course, we have spare parts provision, and these do not involve any extensive risks for a traditional product company. Whereas if we talk about these very complex, sophisticated offerings, that you go from a focus on the product to the customer's process, and you go from input-based to outcome-based. Clearly that involves a lot of different types of risks. Operational risks, financial risks, you have coordination, you have with third parties. Now we saw in the crisis as well, the disruption. Maybe it's enough that one component is missing, and you cannot deliver this, you cannot integrate this complex solution anymore. So you become much more dependent on also other actors in your supply chain, in your ecosystem.